Live, getting results. This is News 6 at 9.
Well, social media is a never-ending landscape of beautiful faces, fit bodies, and lavish lifestyles. And for many teenagers, the pressures to keep up their appearance can have a negative impact on mental health.
Depression and anxiety affect so many, including teens, and often we're hearing about the rise of suicide rates. This month, a national campaign is raising awareness of suicide prevention.
Joining us now to talk about the warning signs of depression and how to get results is licensed mental health counselor Shantala Boss. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, let's break down the statistics. Where are we? We're talking about teens and this big problem.
Well, suicide is a leading cause of death in young people in the United States currently. And since the late 90s, it has increased by 25% overall with the overall population. So it is more harmful to the direct population than smoking 15 cigarettes a day currently. It is more of a health risk.
So you said since the 90s, it's increased, the suicide rate has increased 25%. Do we know why that is or what the trend is there?
Well, we're looking at a lot of different factors. One does have to do with social media. Now, social media doesn't cause suicide, but it does alienate those people, and it keeps people in and from meeting other people, having community, so it can increase loneliness and isolation. Also, cyberbullying with teens. It's so widespread, you can't just get rid of it by talking to the person. Everybody has a picture, everybody has a comment, and it spreads throughout the school with children and with adults in other ways.
Depression is also one of the big underlying factors. Is there any reason why maybe is depression on the rise, or what's causing that?
Well, depression is directly correlated with the isolation and anxiety due to some of these things like the increased social media. I mean, we don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore to buy our groceries. So human interaction is essential for human beings, and we do need to have other people that we can have common interests with and a sense of belonging. Communities are breaking down. Unfortunately, families are breaking up, so there's not as much of a community involvement as there were in the 90s as there are today.
We just talked yesterday about being great neighbors and how important it is to be neighborly in your community. I've talked a lot with mental health counselors about this topic, and one of the things that surprised me the most was how you have that conversation with a young person. And every mental health counselor I've talked to, I wonder if you agree, says you really should say the word suicide. You should not be afraid of it because it's important to open the door and have that conversation.
Absolutely. Talking about it, mentioning the word, you're not going to cause someone to want to harm themselves by mentioning it. Every teenager, every child knows about this, unfortunately, or many people have had someone that has had something happen to them or had a suicide. So they need to be able to have the talk, say the words, and express themselves and not be afraid to. Also, I say, make sure not to say, you know, suck it up or it'll be fine or get over it, you know, third world problems sometimes, because everybody has their own individual situation and nobody can judge where someone else is. So just listening, being mindful and being present and never taking for granted where someone's at if they say they're going through something.
And you know, we've had high profile suicides of celebrities in the past year or so. And so I know my daughter is 9 and she saw some of those on the news and was asking questions about it. Is that too early to start having this conversation?
Absolutely not, because unfortunately they're already exposed to it, like you said. So having those conversations, but also helping them to understand that they can always talk about it, ask for support. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid of it, but to speak out and to help and support their friends if they're experiencing some depression as well.
And you know, there's the suicide hotline as well, 1-800-273-TALK. That's been around a long time, but you know, there's even been a song about it.
Oh, yes, there has been a recent song in pop culture, so it's kind of sad that that came to that, but it's great to know that there is that resource and that you can reach out and you're never alone.
What warning signs do we need to be looking for? I mean, so many times when you hear of these tragedies, people say, oh, well, I wish I had known and I didn't know. What are the signs maybe that we wouldn't necessarily think of that we need to be looking out for?
Well, anger and aggression, withdrawal, some fascination regarding death, maybe a lot of picture drawing or things on social media that are pretty dark. Also, warning signs as far as if there's a family issue, maybe some issues in the family with tragedy, a recent issue that's happened there, sometimes cultural factors, things like that that have happened within the community, if the person is going through a lot during that time. So checking on those things, as well as like drop in grades, withdrawal from friends, all the normal things we see when we see someone being depressed as well.
And you talked a little bit about how social media doesn't cause suicide, but
Right.
it is something that kids can turn to and look at for information. I know that we've had news stories about misinformation in YouTube videos, for example, that kids are getting a hold of. What is something that you would say to parents who are worried about their kids using social media to get their information about this?
Well, that's a great point, because unfortunately also there is so many more resources on how to complete the act, or there are also news shows on, even on Netflix, there's stories about children that are doing this. So limiting their content to like availability to this stuff, but also just having open conversations, because you're not going to completely keep them from that. And I think a lot of parents aren't even aware of what their kids are looking at. So really even watching these shows with them. There's a recent one that came out on Netflix, it's been out for a few series. Watching it with them, talking about it with them if they're going to watch it anyway. For younger kids, definitely just really preventing them from getting on to those certain types of social media and seeing that stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that
Thank you for
valuable
having me.
information. Yeah, something we want to continue to
Yes.
talk about.
Thank you.
In Volusia County, a woman